colleague of fucking podcast producers, but
Swayze,
So just because I like to have a crisp, clear audio, so people don't have to listen to that for an hour. That
I'm gonna give you a crisp, clear punch in the fucking face.
it's like sound and then visual. But I actually listened to, in preparation for this, I listened to podcast 41. Took a trip back to. It was about budgeting, and it was like in 2021 during like post-COVID era. And as I was listening to it, I was like, holy shit, I wonder if these guys have ever heard of Mike McAlwick's Profit First. And then, Kevin, you're like, there's a book I'm halfway through called Profit First, and it's a good-ass book. And then right there, you were actually talking about, like, a lot of it was like the woes of being an owner and the difference between like being an owner-operator and like, quote-unquote, a CEO or delegating and letting go of the task and stuff like that. So like I took some notes, and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to see now in 2024, the progression of that, like looking back, you know, where is that at? And is it now easier to delegate? Do you still feel like you're dealing with those same struggles?
Fuck, you're on my podcast, man. Don't make me answer hard questions. Yeah, well, I still struggle with it. You know, I try and give everybody the agency to take tasks and run with it. And I'd say like most of the time they do a pretty good job. There's things where they'll make a decision and then I'll be like, oh man, I would have done that, or I would have done this differently. And they'll come to me and be like, we did this, but next time we're going to do it like this. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. It's like a learning, you know what I mean? There's a learning curve to everything. I've got a philosophy that if you have the urge to want to do it, then I'm not afraid to let you break it, because I didn't know what I was doing when I still don't know what I'm doing. And I break shit all the time. And that's the only way people learn. And I find that they learn a lot faster when it's their idea and they take responsibility for a task and then they break the thing in learning, than me going like, oh, here's how I would do it. And then it's like 3 times later, it's like, oh, okay, we're just going to change this and do it like this anyway, based on what we learned, based off of my dumbass idea. So it's like, yeah, I still feel the same. And then sometimes there's just so much going on that I'm just like, are we making money? Are we not losing anything? That's just sort of like my philosophy, is like, is every dollar coming through the door that could be? And then after the fact, if we're losing any more than we shouldn't have to, then let's change it and figure out how we can save some money.
Does that answer your question? That. Yeah. You guys are both fathers, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a 5-year-old, 6-year-old now who just started kindergarten, and I'm a small operation, 9 employees. And that's exactly how I feel. It's like, how do I give them enough leadway not to choke themselves, but to make the mistakes and say, okay, did we productively move forward? And I just feel like I'm, you know, all these guys, and myself, I took over the business. And Greg, I know you like to do an entrance, so we can get to that too. I know I skipped a step. But yeah, so I when I bought the business, I took over the owner, the owner's wife, and the head captain. So I took over 3 roles. The first 2 summers, I was flying, doing the paperwork till 3 a.m., 7 days a week, all of it. And I was like, this is not sustainable. So I brought 2 guys in and trained them, went through the whole ASTM standard of 500 flight rotations, brought in a guy to do training buckets, all of that. And now this summer's fruits of the labor to let them go. And it's like every day I'm like, holy cow, like, should I be on top of them? Should I not? You know, like stressing about how do I watch them. But yes, I get exactly what you're saying, Kevin. It is a weird dichotomy every day of like, man, am I giving them enough room to grow, or am I, you know, hovering over them? And is this business going to fail because of them?
Well, we have a lot to talk about on the show, Justin. And we kind of did a fire entrance here, just out of the gate. But we have a really good show today. We have Justin Beard, owner of Paradise Parasail, Lake of the Ozarks. That's the first person we had from Missouri on the show. Episode 150, we're here. We've actually done 150 episodes. So a great achievement for Kevin and I. And so, before we get started, real quick.
What are we going to do? Are we going to pitch something?
We got to pitch something.
Sell something?
Just real quick. Water sport conference. We're live. www.watersportpodcast.com. Click on the conference link. You're going to hear it every single show about what we're doing, and a lot of you that listen have been to our show, our conference year after year. We're going to have a 2-day event, St. Augustine, Florida. Tickets are $199. They include your food, nightly events. We got great programming. Maybe Justin will be joining us at the conference to talk about parasailing and all the other stuff that comes with it. But yeah, check it out, www.watersportpodcast.com, and get your tickets.
All right, I want to give Justin his intro. I've known Justin 10 minutes, and he might quite possibly be my favorite guest of 2024. He's a smart guy. He's a parasailer. He is from like a place that I talk about, oddly enough, all of the time, Lake of the Ozarks. I've never been there. I always reference it as being like this big boating community that we've never had a footprint on. And I'm so excited to have you. That's like no bullshit. Like, and in the last 10 minutes of us talking, like, I'm a great judge of character. That's my great fucking, my talent in the world is recognizing talent in other people. And from the 10 minutes I've known Justin, he's a really fucking smart guy. And I'm super stoked to have you. And we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come and join us and give us a little bit of a rundown about you, brother. Give us your history and what it is that you do and how you got into it.
Well, thank you. I'm speechless beside myself. You are a phenomenal liar. I can see, if I don't know what your wife looks like, but you definitely married up. So yeah, I grew up on Lake of the Ozarks. I was born in Mississippi. My parents quickly moved to Missouri. By 13, I was driving 40-foot sea rays around the lake so that older adults could get inebriated and I couldn't get a ticket. I grew up wakeboarding right when it came around. I started working at a marina at 16. One of my sister's friend's dad walked into the grocery store I was working at and was like, "Hey, you want to get out of here?" I'm like, "Please." Yes, absolutely. He's like, "I'm running a marina. Get those 2 girls that are very attractive to come with you and come run this marina for us." So I did the boat rentals and jet skis. They did the gas dock. There's a gentleman that owns, if you're into firearms, he owns Springfield Armory, Dennis Reese. He's from Illinois, always comes to Missouri. He started a huge operation called the Watersports, and I started working for them. I got in the parasail world because the parasail guys came over to the marina and said, "Hey, we'd like to start pushing rides out of your guys' location. Is this something you'd be interested in doing?" The whole rigmarole. I met the captain and randomly saw him out at the bar. And he was like, "Yo, bro, you need to come parasailing tomorrow." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I need a crew member tomorrow. Can you come work for me?" I'm like, yeah, bro. Talk to me when you're sober." He's like, "No, I'm being serious. 8 a.m., show up to the site." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Let's do it." So I showed up. And at that time, I was working 4 10-hour shifts at the marina. When you're 19, you don't have a life. So the other 3 days a week, I started parasailing. And quickly, by the end of the summer, I was like, all right, forget the marina life. The parasail life is for me. I went to the University of Central Missouri, Go Mules, Division II school, ran track there, and had no declare major. Like my junior year, they're like, "Justin, you have to declare a major or drop out because like you're out of electives." So I studied communications, which is a bullshit degree. And I flew to Florida like May of 2013, got my captain's license, shuttled that summer, learned to fly the next year. And then once I got out of school, I moved to Florida full time. Just to entertain my mom, I applied for a couple jobs, and I'd worked. I got out of school in December. I went to Florida in January. So I'd worked from like January till like September, parasailing, head captain, running the operation every day, 7 days a week. And at that point in time, I made like $65,000, and I applied for 3 different jobs, and the salary was $51,000 before taxes. So I went home. My mom's like, "Why haven't you got a new job?" I'm like, "Mom, I just made like 20% more than I'm going to make at a career job. Like I'm staying the parasail way." And so I parasailed on Fort Myers Beach from 15 to 17. When you're younger, everybody's like, "Oh, you don't have kids, you don't have a family, like get out, live life." Well, like they fell on my deaf ears, and my uncle lives out in Breckenridge. So we were at Thanksgiving, and he's like, "Yo, bro, if you ever want to move up to Colorado, let me know." I literally followed him out the door, and I was like, quote unquote, "This is me letting you know I want to come out to Breckenridge." And he's like, "Okay, let's make it happen." And so a couple months later, I loaded up, moved out to Breck. I actually thought I was done with parasailing at the time. I got a call from a gentleman in Washington State, asked me to go out to Washington State and parasail out there, which if you've never been to Washington, most gorgeous place in the fucking world. It is 10 out of 10. Parasailed there, went back to Colorado, went out to North Carolina, and then I finished as an operator my stint in Fort Myers. Crazy enough, the captain that took my place had a seizure on the boat, collapsed on the boat with the chute in the air, whole mayday, 911. He had 3 different surgeries on his brain. He actually got his license back. He's back in Fort Myers flying as a head captain now. So the owner called me when I was in North Carolina flying the Outer Banks. He's like, I need you to come back tomorrow. And so I took the job back. And that was ultimately the guy that came to me with the NDA, like we were talking about, Kevin, and said, hey, would you be interested in buying these operations? And just happenstance, I had a family at the time. I was still working 7 days a week. Like when my girlfriend and I dated, this is funny, 25 years old, she's like, hey, I'm gonna take some PTO. You should take some and we'll go have a day. I'm like, what's PTO? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, legitimately, what's PTO? She's like, paid time off. I'm like, that doesn't happen. She's like, call in sick. I'm like, I don't call in sick. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, if I'm sick, the boat doesn't move. She's like, so what do you mean if you're sick? I'm like, I have been, earmuffs, putting bleach and water in a bucket, shitting my pants, throwing up over the side of the boat, slinging rides because that's all I knew. There was a word called boundaries that I never heard existed until I started dating her. And then she was like, yo, bro, you have to set some kind, like, you can't work your whole life away. And that's when I was like, all right, I do need to make a change. And here we are.
And how long have you owned the business?
I bought it in 2022. So this will be my 3rd season.
How are those boundaries working out for you these days?
Slowly but surely. I made the biggest one was last year when our little guy started kindergarten. I told all the employees, like, hey, I am not missing him start kindergarten. So like we will shut down the business for 2 weeks, or you guys will be ready to fly parasails for 2 weeks, but I am going to go down to Florida. And it was like, we die off. Like here, it's so seasonal. Like after Memorial Day, it turns on. And then when kids go back to school in August, it dies off. And you guys know that, seasonal.
Yeah.
Just there.
How many parasail boats do you have?
We're a small operation. So I do have 2 Paracrafts, Warrior 32s with 496s in them, but I just run one policy. So I have 1 shuttle, 1 6-pack Paracraft. And I mean, it's a small, tight lake. We just go out there and sling rides.
A Paracraft?
Yeah. So the first one, it was a mold from England that ended up getting brought over. So one of my boats was made in England in 95. And then a boat builder brought one over to Texas and was built in, I believe, Austin or Houston, Texas in 96. They're awesome looking boats. You can actually, now they're called Cherokees. Yeah, look them up. It's a Paracraft or a Warrior 32. Now it's called the Cherokee 32. It's almost like a Nordic. It looks similar to a Nordic.
Oh,
okay. It's got a little wider body. It doesn't have a lifted deck. It's got a really long back deck. Yeah, I have to say this far boat over here, the yellow, it's all white now.
All right.
Cool,
yeah, I'm looking at them.
So Justin, the business you bought, I mean, it's celebrating 40 years.
We celebrated 40 years last year.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome to actually buy a business with that much history. So do you see like generational repeat business? You know, kids that now they're dads or even grandfathers, I'd say, that are bringing their families to you. That's awesome. I mean, it's really hard to find businesses to buy that have that much.
Were you weirded out? I'm assuming that before you worked there, that you must have operated Ocean Pros, yeah.
So I grew up on so I've been fortunate enough that I can say I've operated to my ability every boat that's out there. So when I was in Washington State, Centurions, the boat I ran in Florida, you can look this one up if you ever heard of it. Multi-activity craft. It was built by Ocean Pro or built by CWS. It's a ribbed inflatable. It was inspected for 24 passengers. It's a center console boat, and I will swear I will fight anybody. A center console parasail boat is the best boat in the world because you're not sitting turned over yourself. You can turn to the side. We had Morse controls. One was winch, one was throttle. So all day, I mean, the way I could maneuver that boat, getting passengers on and off. But yes, I ran a 31 OP. I ran a 35 OP. I ran Nordics. I've actually ran an Aerial Pro. That was a backup boat when I was in Washington. I ran gassers, diesels, Volvos, Cats, Cummins, 454s, 496s, 502s, piston pump, gear pump.
So you were tied for first with everyone else as the best parasail captain.
No, the best parasail captain I've ever seen. His name is Chase Hussey, and this guy could legitimately land a flight on another boat with 1,200 feet of line out. He spent his entire career flying. So like I said, most of my career I was in Fort Myers Beach flying. And, being in the parasail industry, Lee Abbott, he swears that Lake George is the most difficult place. But if you know about Lake of the Ozarks, it's a power boat capital in the world. We have more 30-plus foot boats here on Lake of the Ozarks than anywhere else in the continental U.S., and we're on a half-mile wide long lake. That's 92 miles. We fly in about a 3-mile by half-a-mile wide spot. We're dealing with boats going 120 mile an hour with the 60-foot boat going by the other way while transferring with the chute aloft. We're doing a boat every 20 minutes. The guy that flew here for 14, 15 years is hands down, like my buddy and I, he owns Operation. We wish it was a competitive sport. Like, we wish there was a clear, like, world champions and, like, there's a hula hoop. Go put 600-pound bucket in that hula hoop with all your line out, you know, and having a competition like on that capacity.
So Justin, what you're saying, Lake of the Ozarks is full of people with 12-foot dicks and Trump boat parades every week. Is that one? That?
Hey, that sounds like a good thing. 12-foot dicks
COVID
and Trump parades? Count me
my
in.
kind of party, baby. So whenever COVID hit, there's 3 major towns here, and the mayor of all 3 major towns came out and said, we're not shutting anything down. We're not stopping regulations. We're going to let business owners make their decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a bar here called Backwater Jack's, and you can look this up. It made national news. Every year on Memorial Day, and it's coming up. They're advertising it on now on social media. It's called No Ducks Given. And at high noon, in this huge pool bar, because that's all there is now at the lakes. It's every bar built a huge pool next to it, and you just boat to it, and you go get trashed. There's a swim-up bar. They drop all these ducks, and one duck has like a winning number on it, and you win some same prize. Well, they did No Ducks Giving during COVID, and that became, so between Jason Bateman dropping Ozarks, the No Ducks Given party making national news, it was insanity, and it's still been insanity here. It's awesome.
I was going to say, I was like, is there anybody selling heroin via Bible on the church boat? That's what I'm interested in.
But,
I mean, fucking love that show, dude.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good.
Justin, wasn't there a pretty bad accident with the amphibious duck boat?
That's
on
in
the lake?
Table Rock, Branson, yes. And that was a very unfortunate story. And that's a great case study for anybody listening. If you are in maritime, go look at that case study, because it's very much a right down the middle catch-22. It was a kind of a crazy storm that blew up. Half the room says, oh, you should have known. You should have had people looking at radar. You should have seen it. The other half of the room is like, dude, it was sunny and 90 on one side of town and 60-mile-an-hour winds on the other side of town. It was a freak thing that came over the hill. We're in the Ozark Mountains, so it's huge rolling hills. But yeah, and other redundancies. It's almost like what's the Tom Hanks movie where they're like, the gate didn't work, the Somalian pirate one, where it's just like all these little things, or the bridge that just went down in the Chesapeake is like all these little things added up. Where like, oh, if they would have done this and this and this, the duck boat wouldn't have went down. And I mean, 18 passengers lost their life. I mean,
it's really bad. I remember that.
Captain Phillips, right? That I was like searching the banks of my memory. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, I mean, anybody who's ever been behind that wheel, like knows where you've just been like, what the fuck? Where did that come from? You know what I mean? Like, there's like, when you have a sail out and you have X amount of time to get in and something builds up, and you could have a radar like directly in your face, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like people get strapped into a fucking parachute and they go 600 feet of line out, 800 feet of line out, 1,200, whatever they're doing these days. And it's like, yeah, man, I mean, you're quite literally doing like a death-defying thing. You're trying to defy death, and sometimes you don't win. It's like, I hate to say it like that, but there's never going to be a day where we're got them all. Like, everyone jumps out of a fucking airplane, and sometimes the chutes don't open. There's nothing that we can do to make the industry like 100%. Like, look at a customer and be like, you're not going to die today. If you have a heart attack up there and you're 600 feet out and like nobody knows, it's not like we could hear you, then it's just like, well, fucking yeah, man. If they would have been on the boat and you gave like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, it's because all the detractors and everybody comes out and it's like, well, you should have done this and you should have done that and you should have known this and you should have known that. And it's frustrating. You certainly don't want anybody to like lose their life, but like, to your point, same thing. I flew in Key West. I had fucking easy life off the dock in the Caribbean. You could see mostly anything coming 10 miles away. I could outrun anything. I could be 7 miles offshore, 10 miles offshore at the reef, parasailing while Key West was getting swallowed alive. I mean, I outran so many fucking storms, but it's like, you know, yeah, one side is here, and you have. This is why when we had the law, right, 17 knots in Florida, sustained, And I've always been like, well, 17 knots from where? Like 17 knots on the water, 17 knots off the water, 17 knots behind a building, 17 knots like the sustained wind is almost like it's like anything but. Like tell me a day where I'm out there and I'm like, yeah, it's 5 miles an hour right now. Like, no, it's like 5 miles an hour, 5.5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 6. Like, I mean, it's changing at all times. So it's just like the 17 knots thing is like, I don't know. It's just, it's a weird thing to me because on the water and off the water, you'll get two different readings. And, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to, until you're behind that wheel, to fucking be like, oh yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I think now with everything that's happened, everybody for the most part knows when to shut down. But I mean, God, that Lake George, you said that we were out there on a vacation and, yeah, like it looked like goddamn the Bermuda Triangle. I was like, oh fuck. Like I look at some of the water you guys flying, like because when I was flying down there, I was always kind of like, oh, the lakes, it must be so easy. And then the first time I saw one in some gnarly weather, I was like, no.
So, Justin, I asked you to send me some interesting things about you and your business, and you know, this show is the Awkward Watersport Guys, and we talk about business and all that good stuff. But you know, the first two things you put are the body I found and people shitting themselves on the boat. So I can't help but ask you about this body you found and these people shitting themselves on the boat. So please enlighten our audience on these things.
So I always, when I was like writing this, like if you guys know, there's a really good rapper named Little Dicky. He was on a podcast and he's like, I feel like this story needs media attention. He's like, I was on a tennis team and we were horrible, but we were so good at psychology that we would manipulate everybody. And we were way better than we ever should have been. And he like talks about his tennis team and it was a really good story. And so when people normally say, what's the craziest thing you've ever had happen? I try to keep it light on the boat. We don't talk politics. We don't get any of those things. We don't talk about religion, any of that. We keep it super light, fun, captain's jokes, dad jokes. And so I don't say, oh, yeah, I found a dead body once. I always say, well, I've had a lady shit and throw up all over herself. And so we'll go into the body one. So that was when I was in Washington State. And to predicate it, that's the second deepest lake, third clearest, or third deepest, second clearest in the continental U.S. Gorgeous lake. Like, again, if you ever get a chance to go to Washington, go. But right in the middle is a huge mountain range called the North Cascade Mountains. And there's a river they basically dammed up, glacier melt water, crystal clear. When I got there, at the end of the dock, it was 30 feet. I looked down there, I'm like, that's a Coors and that's a Bud Light. So we're going and flying, and in June, it was like June 20-something, summer solstice. And I start seeing, like you start seeing cop cars, EMTs going by, and you're like, okay, we're not dealing with like a typical 911. And then I see out of the east, like from Spokane, a helicopter come in. And then I see one like coming from Seattle, another helicopter, and they're just circling and circling. And we're on a Centurion, pop and drop, 10 to 12 people every hour on the hour flying along. And I'm like, what in the world? So we finally get back to dock, and I asked one of the booth girls, like, what happened? They're like, somebody died. They drowned. I'm like, what do you mean? And so as the story goes, there was some foreign exchange kids from South Korea, and they rented a boat. One of them didn't know how to swim at all. Jumped in, was inebriated, and if you've ever thrown a life jacket, you know that doesn't work worth a shit. It caught the wind and started flailing all over the place. So they literally watched their buddy drown in front of him, and he was exhaling, screaming, begging. So he was sucking in water. He aspirated. He drowned straight to the bottom. And again, like I said, it's like 800 feet. And this is Glacier Melt Lake. In June, it was like 61 degrees. So they searched. And when I say they searched for like 10 days, day and night, they looked for this body nonstop. The parents flew from South Korea. I mean, they have no peace of mind. They don't get to put this to bed. And during that time, the crew member, I was a captain 7 days a week, and I had one crew member. The guy, when I was in Colorado, called me. He's like, hey, I need a captain and crew. I called a buddy. Yo, man, we're both young. You want to roll out to Washington State with me? Let's roll. The guy put us up in a house, gave us a vehicle, and we're working every day. He's like, what would be the odds of us finding the boat? I'm like, Joey, the odds are, if you're going actuarial probable odds, very likely. We're out here every day. We're the only Parasail operation. We're on this water every day. And so 17 days later, so the day after 4th of July, I'm taking off a routine flight, second, third boat of the day, and I'm putting up 3 foreign exchange kids. I look over and I see a body, yellow Hawaiian shirt opened up, face discolored, just floating there, lifeless. And I'm like, Joey, come here. And he comes back. I point at him. He's like, holy cow, man, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to fly this flight, and I'm going to call 911. Like, I got to give myself time. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I called 911. They're like, I'm trying to explain what happened because my mind I already know exactly who it is, what it is. I'm like, I found the body. They're like, what body? I'm like, the South Korean kid that drowned. I just found his body. And they're like, hold on, they're asking all these questions. I'm like, just send the sheriff. And the sheriff turns out to be 20 miles up lake. So like the sheriff's it's going to be a while before they can get down there, guys. I'm like, all right. So I land the flight and it was 3 French kids. And they're like, we just saw, I'm like, I know. They're like, no, you don't understand. We saw I'm like, I know, guys. And right before they landed, I told the customers, I turned on the music. I'm like, hey, guys, I just found a dead body. And they're like, yeah, whatever. They're on vacation. I'm like, no, I'm being serious. If you haven't heard, like this was regional, if not national news, this kid drowned. And so I deflated. I took everybody back to the dock. I had radioed ahead, told the owner to come out, hop on the boat. And so we went out and we found the body. And this is 5th of July. So it was a busy day. And I used the Centurion to just block the body from nobody like running over it or seeing anything. And the sheriff gets there and they're trying to they're struggling to put it in a body bag and pull it up. So like we pull up next to them and like help pull it out and put it in their boat. And then we go back to the dock and all right, guys, hop on, go back to flying. And then that night, my crew member's like, dude, I can't work tomorrow. Like that was too heavy. And I don't know if I'm too cynical or to me, I was like, man, that is the job we sign up for. And like, you never in a million, I didn't see that on my bingo card, as the kids would say. But yeah, I mean, it was insane. I very much feel for the parents. At least they got closure. They got their child's body back. They got to take him back to South Korea. They got to bury him. But I couldn't believe that, And
is it the first time? Have you ever seen a dead body outside of
no. What's it? Boys in the Hood? No, I never seen a dead body.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was just thinking Boys in the Hood. Hey, so don't tell that story. I got a really good one for your mate, dude. Next time someone's like, what's the worst thing that you've ever seen? Be like, oh my God, dude, I've seen some crazy shit out here. Worst thing is everybody got off the boat and nobody tipped. It was terrible. That's the worst shit I've ever seen. I used to say that one all the time. I was like, no laughs, but everybody got the picture.
Yeah. They're like, okay, all right.
I turned the music back up. I'd go back to it. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I got an answer for that one. Someone shit yourself on there.
Well, now I know why it's called the Awkward Watersport Guys after that comment. But yes, so it was a rough day. Like you were talking about, winds and where are the limits. And the guy I used to work for, he was a very by the book. He was one of the guys that actually kind of wrote the standards within the WSIA. And he was very big on like, hey, we stop at 20, or if you're getting stood up with a 33, that's where we're at. But we would have a lot of days where it's out of the south. And if you look at Fort Myers Beach, everybody thinks we're in Southwest Florida, so it's sitting on the west side. But Fort Myers Beach actually sits dead south. So you get some of these insane prevailing winds coming on, and 17 pushing 3-4 foot seas is a rough ass day. And I remember one day we're out there on the Mac. The Mac, the nice thing is, was such this low center boat that I could have put like a 39 up and 40 mile an hour winds, turned it off, and it would never keel over. And had a huge, it was a ribbed inflatable, so you just turn sideways and get drugged. So it wasn't if we could fly. I could have put up a 27 and flown all day. It didn't matter. But it was just, could you fly? Passengers were always sick. So this lady, she was from Minnesota. It was her first vacation in 16 years. She lost her husband the year before. Her sister brought her to Fort Myers Beach. It was her second day there. They flew in. It was the second day there, came to the beach. It was rough. It was the middle of spring break. We're out doing numbers. She takes off. I see her up there. She starts leaning over the side, throwing up. And I'm like, all right. So I start bringing them in. They get close. At this time, I didn't have a child. So I didn't know like that distinct child poop, like that chocolatey looking, you can smell it poop. I start seeing it come out of the bottom of the harness. I'm like, no way. Slide her on the back deck, poop trail behind her. And I'm like, holy cow, she's just crying. She's lost. I mean, she lost all bowel movement. She's like, I threw up all over myself. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I know you did. She's like, I shit myself. I'm like, yeah, you did. She's like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, I would be too. And so we have fresh water tank. And when you're on salt water, you always have fresh water tank on board. So I literally douched her out. I had no other option. She had threw up all over her life jacket. I sprayed her all down. I mean, I emptied this 20-gallon tank, took her harness off, took her life jacket off, helped her onto the other boat. And those people are standing there watching. And we just helped. I'm like telling the shuttle, hold on, put the stabilizer lines up, took some bleach and Dawn, threw it on the deck. And I do have a good stomach when it comes out. I'm a pretty nasty person. I can throw up and just throw it off the side of the boat and then grab my sandwich and get to eating. I'm a good old Missouri boy. You know what I mean? If my sandwich
I'd have laid off that winch, dropped them in the water a little bit, pull them into a parawedgie land up into their neck and drag them through the water, bring them back up. Fucking we call it the tea bag, Greg. You put a tea bag in the water and pull it through. And you do that to human beings. I got one for you. If you're a disgusting one, man. I had a guy and he was sitting forward of my helm. And he like gets up, and I can see him. He's green in the gills, and he goes to puke over the side of the boat. And I just I went no, and then he puked directly into my mouth. It was like, I was like no, and then it went. I mean, hot.
Yeah, because you're underway. The wind's moving. Yeah, just
we were underway, and I mean, he was, I was on an Ocean Pro. He was like 18 inches from me, and he was just like his mouth into my mouth, and it was some nice hot curry I think he had for lunch.
Speaking of curry, do you guys ever watch those clips from like India when they're like they're the street food people? You know what I'm talking about? It comes up in my feed, and it literally like I like lose my lunch.
Well, yeah, I mean they're just doing everything with their hands. You know what I mean? He's like kicking his nose and then going back to it.
Rats are going around, like literally, like they're using newspaper, old newspaper to serve it, and it's like, thank God I live in America.
I saw one the other day. Somebody showing where they make like the little cones, the waffle cones, and it was a Indonesian type Middle Eastern factory, and they were barefoot, running all over the place, throwing them all over the ground. The guy's like, I no longer want to know. I'm getting off social media. I don't want to know where my food comes from. I don't want to know.
So let me get this right. So you don't actually fly anymore. You just have captains underneath you?
No, I still fly. So we're seasonal like everywhere else, like the big days. So I always joke around. I say I'm the heavy lifter. So like the guys, they go out there and they fly the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. Once we start getting into the bigger number of days, I still have to hop on the boat. Because you know how it is. You start scheduling full, whether you're on the hour every hour, we run a shuttle every 30 minutes. You lose a chute, it's tangled up, it's rolled, or you get a 500-pound triple, and the guy's like, I'm going to have to split you up. If you run 20 boats, 2 minutes a boat turns into 40 minutes, turns into 2 boats, turns into 12 people, you just lost. And now you're behind schedule 40 minutes. Now your 5 o'clock is getting out at 6:45, and they are pissed, and you're getting one-star reviews. So, yeah, I still do the heavy lifting, and if it's rough days, like yesterday it was blowing 30 here, so we actually went out through the snail, did the wranglers, cut a line, put the bucket in the water, ran down a chute, made sure everything is good to go. So it's not that I don't trust the guys, but it's still, I'm new enough. I went through the SBA process. I'm still carrying a huge nut and a big loan. And so it's like, I still have to keep control until there's not enough. Like you guys, the podcast I listened to was about budgeting and everything. There's not enough margin in the business for me to just completely turn it over to the guys. I love them. I trust them. But I just know it would be ignorant of me and naive of me to just step completely away and say, all right, guys, because I live in Orlando most of the year. And trust me, I'd like to get to a point where I could stay in Orlando most of the year. But as of right now, I'm up here day one, and I'm staying till last day.
Yeah, man. I mean, Parasail is such like anytime someone's like, like owner operator, and like, oh, I'm going to buy a boat and start a parasail business. I'm like, man, you're going to buy a parasail boat and start a new job. Dude,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like, there's this, like 2 boats is sort of like when people talk to me about starting that business. I'm like, yeah, if you're going to start with 2 boats, it's great because you don't have to trust somebody from, the bulletin board on custom shoots or fucking Craigslist or whatever, and they're all the best, right? And any guy I ever hired when I managed Sunset Watersports in Key West, any guy ever that came to me from custom shoots or I saw end up at another company via that message board was always just like, oh, fuck, dude. Like there's no way I can retrain all of the bad habits, or not even necessarily bad habits, just habits that aren't my bad habits. And now I have to like retrain you how to do one time, and I mean, we're fucking parasail guys. I want you to think I'm cool. So I got to kick some numbers to you. But like I flew 90 people in 3.5 hours off a 12-pack one time. Like, I mean, fucking, like, we were flying off of one of these big head boats that was like an all-day trip that went out from 10 to 4. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of like a spattering of each event, right? Like, a little bit of jet skiing, a little bit of parasailing. And I remember I had a boat of 12. And the guy's like, he's like, yes, we want to fly all single. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's cool, man. And so we called the one guy up, called 2 of his buddies up, threw him into a triple. And he's like, no, we are single. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm sure you're single. Yep. You're not married. I'm personally married. He's like, what? And I'm like, off the back deck of the boat. And they keep on saying it to me, each one as they come up. Yeah. I'm like, look, man, don't talk to each other for all I care. You know?
Yeah.
I'm like, we're flying in triples, man. That was a ridiculous. I was literally doing like under 20-minute boats, sail up to sail down, landing literally right at where we were disembarking from. I mean, to that. And so it's funny. We don't have a lot of parasail guys on here, but I've literally trained all of my dockhands that rent boats and rent jet skis from that ethos, right? Like, seconds are minutes, minutes are hours, and if you fuck this up, you're going to lose minimally one full boat at the end of the day. And when you start to add that all up at the end of the year, that's a lot of fucking money. So it's like, man, I envy you a little bit because I miss flying sometimes. Like, I've actually talked about getting a parasail boat, but then I'm just like, man, when you're out there and it's just like customers, all of the things that a normal business has to go through. And then it's like on that line, it's 17, 18, it's like 18 knots. You're right there. Boats are full. Is it going to go up? Is it going to down? Is rain going to come out? And it's just like, I think you just have to have such a great attitude for that business and understand like it's all going to come out in the wash and try not to look at it day by day. But because we're all trained like that, because we're like seconds, minutes, hours, days, you lose one day and you're just like,
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I always say account for a loss of 5 days, and I can't. If we're closed 5 days a month, I'm just like, this is the worst 5 days of my life.
Do you have parasail dreams?
I used to when I was younger. Yeah, I would have like the parasail was attached to my back, and I'm running up and down a hill trying to save. Yeah, I used to. I sleep fine now at night. But yeah, I would never hire a guy, and I shouldn't say never because I don't believe in never or always, but it'd be very unlikely for me to not hire within. And I have plans of scaling and growing, but that would all be predicated off of training within, and I would never put an operator in a position to have a location unless I felt fit that he knew how to handle everything. And that's how I feel about jet skis. I think the natural, like you said, ethos or the natural pecking order of a lot of water sports.
Well, you're breaking up pretty good, Kevin, too. Some internet.
Man, I appreciate getting me on. This is I don't get to talk shop this much.
I know, it's fun. We have a good time. We don't.
Yeah, we got to get more into your side of things.
The thing is that most operators that listen, they don't want us to talk about like business hardcore for 50 minutes. They want it to be just like the conversation we're having. A little fun, a little bit of business, something they can relate to because water sport operators don't talk with each other a lot.
That's true.
They don't, and they don't have time. So, and plus some people are in markets that there's really nobody to talk to. They don't feel comfortable talking to their competitors. So we're kind of like that safe space for most that, there's guys out there like me.
Very cutthroat. Yeah. I was impressed when I was listening to you. You were talking about all, like 100 KPIs and how you run your operation stuff and your team and everything. Yeah. I'm like, man, that's like so badass being at, economics of that scale. And having to, allocate that kind of bandwidth to all your teams and be able to oversee things and be 10,000 foot view at all times, looking at like, okay, what are these metrics? All right, well, let's run this and see all this pecking order of how everything's operating.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about the WSIA and your involvement there because I went and I've been a member of the WSIA for a couple years. I mean. I've been my team at Trip Shock's been attending for several years the symposium that's in South Florida every year. I actually went last year, sponsored for Wave Res. I remember seeing you, Justin, there. Your face was very, very familiar, but obviously you said your wife was sick, so you weren't too active. But you're on their board, right? And yeah, and tell us a little bit about. Well, just tell us about WSIA because we don't really talk about that much on the show, or if we may not even mention it at all. And then what your involvement is, and a little bit about the annual conference they do.
Yeah, certainly. So I started attending in 2012 when it was a very new event, and like I said, the owner before me, when I got brought in, I didn't realize, but the Parasail company I started working for is Scientology. Kevin will appreciate this. We inflate with the Wrangler and a bar on. Like that's unheard of. Like we do things every ass backwards, but we think we're the best way. We think we're right, like every operation. But he was heavily involved in the regulations, heavily involved. Like myself, I helped write the processes of under live load transfers. So I've been involved since 2012. The WSIA is basically an organization. They're really big in like wake surfing, wakeboarding, the water sports side of board activities. They deal with a lot of manufacturer stuff. They're basically we're a place that gives somebody a haven to set up committees, to put in parameters, to help be an organization where you can have a standard. So our standards are actually through the ASTM. No different than an amusement park, no different than Disney or Universal. So there is, I don't know off the top of my head the acronym for ASTM, but it's like safety and testing measurements or something like that. It's Association of Safety and Testing Measurements, something like that. That's where the standards live. The WSIA is basically an organization that allows these committee members to get together. They find the funding, they charge the fees. They do a lot of stuff like Greg, exactly what you're doing, the facilitating for it. So we say, hey, we want to start this. And they say, cool, we're going to take that on our back and we're going to make it happen. No different than the first Parasail Symposium was at the Expo in Orlando. And it was like, hey, we can clearly see there's way too many people. They need your own symposium, your own forum, your own expo. So that's when the WSI is like, hey, we will help facilitate this. We'll find the venue. We'll set up the room rates. We'll set up the food. We'll help put the committee together. Because at the time, the Coast Guard, there was, for a while in the early 2000s, it was pretty wild cowboy, run and gun, fly-by-night operations. And the insurance was like, dude, we're getting out. Everybody's dropping you. Lloyd's was out. Chubb was out. First flight was, right on the fence. And that's when the Coast Guard's like, hey, we're going to regulate you guys, and you're going to fly 20 days a year when it's sunny, 00 winds, and it's perfect sea conditions. Or you guys can start self-regulating and figure out a way to do this yourself. And that's when some of the leaders that were already in the industry kind of came together and said, hey, guys, if we don't put something together, we're all losing our livelihood. Humans are very resourceful. It's necessity, and that's where the WSA was like, hey, we've already done this for wakeboarding. When wake surfers were starting to get hurt a lot, they were like, hey, we kind of stepped in and said, what is causing all these injuries with the manufacturers? They did the reverse drive, all those things that said, okay, we're going to make it safer. And so that's how that kind of came through fruition. Since then, you have this main committee, which is a Parasail committee that writes the standards. In the state of Florida, Kevin, like you said, there are laws. And then in the rest of the United States, and even now we have some operators from like New Zealand, Virgin Islands, Canada, that come down and they follow the regulations. And if anything ever happened and you're in a court of law, they're going to say, hey, what regulations do you follow? What standard do you follow? Kind of like with you guys, the 606. Did you guys follow this by the book? No? Okay. Why do you not use a Wrangler? Why do you not use a snail? Why do you not have weather sets on every boat? Why do you not do a maintenance log? Why do you not do training drills? Why are you not doing all this stuff? And if you're sitting in a deposition and you're like, oh, yeah, we just don't really subscribe to that. We don't really believe in that. That's not really what we're about. They're going to say, okay, well, we can tell you that if you would have been about this, if you would have followed the standards, you would have been in a much better place. So for me, I got involved. I don't like to be a police officer by any means, but I'm a team guy. Ran track in college, very involved in group sport activities, did CrossFit for a little bit, too hard on my body. But I'm really big on, if you're a team, you buy in. And I went to the symposium year after year after year. All these guys were, hoorah, yeah, we're all about this. I support it. Let's do it. And then I would be on social media and I'd see, okay, well, that guy just said he's all about the ASTM standards, but he's not using a Wrangler. Life jackets are inside the harnesses. The harnesses they're putting tiny little girls in black harnesses. They're flying quads. They're doing all these things that go against manufacturer, insurance, standard recommendation. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I don't want to be in the same room with these guys. I actually have more merit for the guy that says, I am not part of the standard. I do not support the WSIA. I've been doing this for 40 years. You're not going to tell me how to operate. I'm a safe operator. I'm going to keep doing it my way. And I'm not going to be a lie. I'm going to do it this way. And good for you guys. Keep doing your thing. And so that's when I got involved 2 years ago. And I said, I'm tired of seeing across social media these guys posting content that's negligent, but they're still putting that WSI sticker on their boats. They're still putting that placard in their office saying, oh, we're members of the WSA, and using it like a merit of honor, but not following the standard. And that's when I stood up, like last year I stood up and I talked about how to market your mindfulness when marketing your business. And I basically took photos from across the industry that were gross negligent and said, hey guys, if you post stuff like this, 4 people in a parasail with no snail, with the straps on the outside of your life jacket, flying with a huge cumulus cloud in your background, do not think the prosecuting attorney is going to find this photo and is going to use it to the maximum of their ability to say, this is gross negligence. If you're flying like this on a daily basis, what makes us believe you weren't flying like this in the incident? Key West. The whole thing happened on the 7 Mile Bridge. I worked for the guy who was actually a very safe guy. I worked for him in North Carolina. And then he went to Marathon and started an operation down there. That captain, it doesn't really matter if he attended the symposium or not, he made some bad decisions and it ended in a fatality. And there is video that's getting used against him. There's photo that's getting used against him. And, you know, if he would have, you know, in hindsight, changed some things, his situation would be a lot different. I mean, at the end of the day, did he kill somebody? Yes. You know, am I empathetic for our industry and operators? Absolutely. Just like Kevin and I were talking about, like, there's nobody that bats 1,000. Like, you try to be perfect. But
that video was ridiculous, man. I mean, my God, I just watched it and it was just like,
cut the line.
I was just like, what the fuck? Like, they were like 50 feet off the boat, dude. Like, why the fuck did you cut the line? Like, how much room did you have behind? Like, I wasn't out there, but it seemed to happen so fast. And initially I was like, did the line snap? And they're like, no, he cut the line. I'm like, I mean, you said 40 with a 39, and I actually got caught in a cold front down in Key West, and that happened to me. And I got drugged like 2 miles offshore. I was just a rookie. I was like 6 months in. And I mean, that thing was like, my knife was in my hand, boat was keeling over, I was shitting a brick, but I was like, don't cut the line, don't cut the line, don't cut the line, don't cut the line, and just prayed. And just as soon as the wind started like letting off, it just like inch by inch took me another 20 minutes to get them back in, went in a free spool, did drug backwards. It came back in. When I look at that, I'm just like, God, man, like, I don't even feel like he gave it enough time, man, like or any time really. Like, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. I saw the video and I was just like, what the fuck? What happened? Why would you cut the line that fast? Like, I don't know.
Well, the hearsay I heard. So I heard. Well, you look at a situation. So like, I can't quote exactly the saying, but it's like, when you're put in a situation, you revert back to the best habits you know. And apparently, the boat had been going in guardian mode, and apparently he cut the line a few days prior. Whether that's fact or fiction, kind of makes sense if you're getting used to a habit of like, oh, my out here is cutting the line, and then he's choosing it, and then like that kind of lines up. You know, when a story tracks, he's not chasing down the parasail. Well, why are you not chasing down the parasail? Well, if your boat's in guardian on a Volvo and you can't go over 15 miles an hour, you know, the whole thing he said, well, there's a shoal over there. Dude, I don't care. Take me away from an operator. I'm a human being. If I'm responsible for somebody's life, I'm putting my $200,000 boat so far on land to save a person's life. Like, I don't care. You can strip me of every single thing. I'm going to do everything I can to save that person's life. To the point where, like, we train not to jump off the boat, but if my last ditch effort is, I'm freaking a gladiator with a knife in my hand, jumping off the bow of the boat, slicing every line I can get a hold of to save somebody's life. You know, to turn around and just cut the line and say, oh, I can't get to it. I mean, that's... I don't
know if you remember in the accident in 2009 in North Carolina, but his mate jumped off the boat to try to deflate the sail, and he said it was like he had jumped onto a fucking trampoline. Like, the sail was under so much pressure that when he hit the sail, and I mean, I've been there where I've like got caught in some shit and like I'm like couldn't get the sail down. Like, it was like the lines reinflating back through my hands like 4 times where my hand was bloody. And I think that probably adds up, but it's like, yeah, 100. I have always thought that too. I'm like, man, if we had to try and like jump on that sail, we'd do it with a knife in my fucking hand and shred everything, you know.
Yeah.
But again, thankfully, never been in that position, man. But it's so I'll tell you, it was the main reason why when I started this company, I was like, when I started Destiny Water Adventures, I'm like, I'm not fucking parasailing, dude. Like, I feel like I got 10 years underneath my belt and nothing happened. I'm like probably 100,000 flights in. I'm like, yeah, man, we'll call it good. I'm gonna leave with that Mayweather record. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna test fate, but it's yeah, man, it's a fucking hell of a way to make a living and a lot of fun. And we were talking earlier about like the sense of community, and you're like, man, I don't get to talk shop this much. Or it's like, I don't know how many captains, I mean, I'm sure used to do happy hour with all the other captains from the other businesses. And that's sort of like where this show came from. I was like, I miss the community of Parasail so much that I was like, man, I feel so lonely in this motherfucker. You know what I mean? It's lonely at the, not even at the top at that, because I'm shit, man. I still bottom paint boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lonely
I
at
was
the middle.
actually tube before I came here, so yes.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're getting kind of to the end of the show, but is there anything you like to mention about WSIA or your business, or just any advice for Paradise operators, just water sport operators in general? I mean, you've purchased a business, you've been doing this a long time. I think you have maybe some knowledge bombs to leave us with.
The biggest thing that changed for me when I business was never stop asking questions, never stop chasing after the people to ask the question for, never stop looking for a better solution, never stop trying to implement new procedures. Every year we show back up, and that's what's so nice about a seasonal business is you get to shut the doors, you get a hard stop, you get to sit down and clear your mind and get to like this even keel, and then start looking, okay, what was KPIs? What was the best things? What were the worst things? What can I change as an owner operator? Like when I go to the symposium, I like literally, I live my life on this notebook. I literally write down things and I check them off as I go. And like, these are the questions I had for you guys, and we like literally didn't get through any of them. So we'll go round two. Or I'm going to come to the event in St. Augustine, so we'll get together there and go over them.
Yeah.
But, I find myself at the symposium now. Like I literally just like nonstop. I'm like writing down stuff. Like if Greg, I ran into you and I was like, oh man, this guy has wave res. Like I'm asking questions of like, okay, like when we were on the phone, that first time, I'm like, so what's your thoughts on this? Or like, okay, so how does this work? Or I'm always just genuinely curious, like humbly curious, naively curious to any and everything that goes around my daily operation.
I didn't give you shit, Justin, but we didn't talk about the fact that you're one of the only water sport operators that I'm aware of that doesn't have online booking. You have a contact form. Yep. But you were very proud of that. They're proud of that fact. But you just want to say, I mean, we talk about
I feel like I know that. I feel like we're not going to talk about why he does that because we don't want the IRS to listen.
No, everything. No. Everything is on the book. It's 2024. If you're trying, the problem is, like we talked about, the 6% kills me. Putting 6% on the customer. If I'm going to go up 6%, if I can get another 6% out of a customer at $100 a piece, I want that $6 coming to me. Another thing is, I hate the ability when I have a price board. I'm very sales driven. So we hire 15, 16-year-old girls, and I bring them in here, and that sounds creepy. We come in here, we do a training program. And I'm like, hey guys, this is how you upsell people. This is how you persuade them to go down. Like our top ride comes with a complimentary Polaroid picture, which gives you half price for life. People that go online, like on our, like you said, our gravity form, you send in a form. Everybody puts our top ride, which is our $90 ride. Everybody says, we just want to do the beginner. We just want to do the beginner. We just want to do the beginner. If I gave them the ability to put in a credit card and purchase that ride right then and there, my margins are going to go way down. We get them here. They think they're doing this ride. 9 times out of 10, they get on the boat, not because we're forcing their hands. It's not a bait and switch. We're simply asking them what they want. And they say, okay, this is going to be the best ride for you. Our top ride, it's the best experience, gives you the dips, gives you the Polaroids, half price for life. You come to the lake every summer. We add the photo packages. We get to select. I can stack boats. I can triple book. I can double book. I can manipulate the system however I see fit. And then 2, I get to answer that phone, which don't get me wrong. I know there's a time and place. If I have 5 operations, the whole system's going down. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to start reaching out to everybody and say, hey, take me fully autonomous. Put me all online. Give me e-waivers. Give me online booking. But right now, when I have nothing else going on, I have the bandwidth. I'm here. I'm in it. Like I have no problem being consumed by it. I had a guy call me at 6 o'clock this morning. Hey, what's your guys' prices? Damn sure I answered that phone. I'm sleeping. Paradise Parasail, this is Justin. How much you guys charge per person? Like, ready for it.
All right. God damn it. Well, we're going to go over just a little bit because I appreciate your time coming to do this. And so I want to give you a little bit of my experience being super sales focused as well. And so I love phones. I do a fair amount of phone sales in addition to online bookings. So what we did is I'm sure if you go through the annals of the show, we did one on SOPs. So from how do you mop a boat to how do you take a phone transaction? We have SOP for everything. So like I quite literally went through the script of our phone calls and literally how I answer, like, because it's again 80-20 principle at play here. It's usually the same questions, right? It's going to be how much, when, how long in the instance of parasail. So like all of those questions, right? I would, if I were you, I would go through what that sales script looks like with them. I would put it on do like a loom or put it in a centralized place. Or what I did in the beginning was that I created a flow chart, and the flow chart was like, okay, what's the difference between like a fishing question and a buying question, right? So no matter what, we always want to get the person to a buying question, right? So if somebody calls and they say how much, it doesn't matter if you employ dynamic pricing or not. People are so used to the question of when are you coming, whether it be hotels, whether it be airplanes, whatever. It's a question that they're more than happy to answer. When are you coming? Saturday. So does two things. One, it starts driving them toward putting them into a buying situation, right? When are you coming? Saturday, right? So in sales, this is just called assuming the sale. So like we're already assuming that you want to go parasailing, you want to go Saturday. So now we've just kind of put them in this psychological situation of, okay, when do you want to come with us? Oh, on Saturday. Oh, awesome. When do you want to come? Saturday, 8 p.m. Perfect. Or 8 a.m., 9 a.m., whatever it may be. Yeah, it looks like we have X, Y, and Z available, and we have X, Y, and Z for $90. Would you guys like to do that? So no matter how the majority of your conversations go, if you can get them into the question and answer game that you know how to close, and you can quite literally put that flow chart in front of them, it's like done and done. Like now you're training them. They literally have something in front of them that they can go, oh, if I say X or if they ask X, I'm going to ask Y. And then you can just literally draw the entire flow chart. Now to the online bookings portion of it and upsells, like I'm the upsell fucking king, man. Like I could sell handshakes if I could in this motherfucker, dude. Like somebody rents a boat, trip insurance, damage protection, lily pads, sups. We have the little basketball hoops that we put on the thing. And then they just go down like a menu. When they go into their top level, they pick their rack rate piece, whatever. So let's say it's parasail. When you tell me you give away the photos, like the Polaroid, it makes my heart hurt. Because I had this business was built off the photos because I got paid $120 a day as a captain, and then they gave us half the money for the photos. So like my job out there was to like keep everybody alive and then sell as many photos as fucking humanly possible.
Yep.
Right. And so the nature of our business was built on upsells. So one thing that we did with our online bookings and upsells, and we can go back and forth on whether you should sell the photos or not sell the photos.
So let me clarify. We sell a photo package. What we sell is one singular Polaroid, which you come back, and we've done it so they get a Polaroid just like that, and we've done this since the 80s. So like you were talking about generational, we have grandma that comes back with mom, which comes with the grandkid. And I was telling Greg about this. Now I'm, like you said, I'm giving, when you're talking about the PPP, I'm giving personal. We sell 30% more deluxes than any other ride, but we have a 3% return rate on. So they love the idea of a Polaroid. They love the idea of hearing it gives you half off for life. But the realistic approach is they don't really use it. But for me, It's an automatic $10 upsell for nothing, for a $1 photo.
Yeah, and then the breakage on it probably super high because they're not calling you back up and looking up. I definitely think it's a smart play, but I'm just interested in.
Oh, I'm ready to transfer you my phones after that. After what you just told me, I'm like, give me your number. Star 73.
Go find the sales episode. Like last year, I don't even remember what number it is, but last year I was on like a sales rant. I did like 5 different sales presentations for different companies, and we would just role play, and I'd just ask questions, and then I don't know, something I really like. It was again one of those things where I'm like, how do I pass me down, right? How am I going to take a phone call, right? Because nobody answers a phone like an owner, because that $90 ride that you sell is always ingrained inside of you as the same guy who started the business last week who's like, man, I got to get this ride. You're so hungry for the rides. And so I was just like, well, why are my conversions so high, but everybody else's are so low? And then when we started to scale out our sales team and our phones and employed CallRail, so with call recording, I could listen to some of the phone calls. And then obviously in the beginning, I was like over their ear. And when I had to go and drive the boat and do X, Y, and Z, then I had to give the phones up. I couldn't physically do everything anymore. So I literally gave it to one of my dockhands who was carrying phones. And I literally just drew out a flow chart on a piece of paper and taped it to right next to the phone. I'm like, if they say this, you say this. If they say this, you say this. Like, no matter what, if they ask, I don't give a fuck what they ask. Just keep on hitting them back with more questions and keep on building the dream in their head, right? Keep on asking them questions about where they're staying, when they're coming, like put them in vacation mode. And then we're going to keep on answering these questions that we're funneling them into in such a way that it's like they're asking questions and we're hitting them back with so much value and so much X, Y, and Z. Sorry. So yeah, at any rate, we could come to the conference out and shoot me your email. I'd love to see your process, because, it's like what works for boat rentals in North Florida might not be the plug in Missouri. Like what you might be doing might just be like the cat's pajamas. But man, I wish we had more time to go over it, because I'm super interested in like not using online bookings. Like around here, that's heresy.
Yeah, it's like, get me off this call.
I love an opportunity to sell you one day, Justin. But I'm not Fair Harbor or Peak gonna blow you up 100 times a week.
And he's an awful salesman.
I appreciate that.
I would. No, but
would be
actually, I hate to call anyone, but Indexic is the most solid. Yes, Indexic is the one that has the most. I don't know the gentleman's name, but I'll give him merit for the fact that he is relentless. And I'm like, dude, we're not. People come to me like it's a bad thing. They're like, we see your systems and like we see it's all trash. And if you ever heard of a company, First Form, Andy Frisella talks about, he does supplements, and he talks about how they hand pack everything, and manufacturers come in, they're like, oh, we could streamline all of this. You're wasting so much money. He's like, I know, I pride myself on that. Thank you. But guys, I appreciate the time.
I love it when people come on and they're like, yeah, have you ever heard of Andy Frisella? And I'm like, yeah, like this whole shtick I do on the show was stolen directly from Andy Frisella.
I'm like, a Missouri boy. Yeah, like you don't.
Oh, I forgot. That's right.
I worked in a supplement company that was the first supplement company outside of Supplement Superstore that carried First Form products back in 2012. So yeah, it's been. When the first MFCEO episode dropped, like I still listen to all of his episodes now. So. That's why that's the only podcast I listen to, and your guys is now. Yeah, I was like scrolling through and
Real AF is the shit, man. And Andy's crazy, but he kind of went political there, and sometimes like some pretty wild out shit. I heard he's supposed to bring the MFCEO project back. He's been talking about doing that. I don't know if it's like gonna be like a Patreon deal or something, but yeah. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you coming on the show, dude. It's always great to meet a kindred spirit and entrepreneur and parasail captain, and just unfortunately way better looking than me. It's like drives me crazy. Look like you should be that's where you know him from, Greg. He was like in a movie or something. This guy looks like like he should be like a teenage heartthrob or something, man. You're a handsome devil.
I could grow a beard like that. Like, it's funny that my last name is Beard. In college, they were like, Justin ain't got no beard. I don't know if we talked about anything. Greg, I'm apologizing because I gave the worst depiction of the WSIA. I probably ruined that, and I don't think we talked about a single thing. But
we did a little bit. I mean, we talked enough. That's fine.
Yeah, we chopped it up, and that's how this happened. This is why the show's fun, and it's great because it's like by operators for operators, and believe it or not, fucking guys that are listening to this show probably want to hear more conversations like this than they do KPIs or graphs. Like, there's only a handful of us that are really interested in that side of shit. But we appreciate you coming on. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you, man?
The best way is, you shoot me a text, 573-286-0807. my email is justinhbeard@gmail.com. I'm not going to
He's
get
in the
my
Facebook
address,
group. Yeah, he's
I'm
in the Facebook group. So you can just tag him. Tag Justin Beard in the Facebook group if you have any questions.
Couldn't believe it. I have like 14 friends in that group, and I never heard of it. And like whenever I found you guys, like I appreciate Instagram. Thank you for putting this in my algorithm because they nailed it. And I was like immediately started. It was a 50-50 shot. I just happened to see Greg's tag. I clicked him, started following him, and then we chatted a little bit. And he's like, "Let's get you on the show." And it was it was awesome.
Well, hey, Greg, you can edit this out. So we're going to talk for a second after we get off. So don't just exit off. But Justin, thanks for coming on, man. Loved having you. Interesting as shit. We look forward to seeing you at the Watersport Conference in October and again at the Parasail Symposium. That's in November, right?
Yeah. We'll both be there. Kevin and I are both going to sponsor it this year. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. That is phenomenal.
Awesome, man.
We look forward to seeing you guys there.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Yep.
Recording off.